Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Race, Racism, and African Heritage Show. My name is Erica Burtis, and today I am just going to chat with you and talk about how marginalized communities need to have how they should handle politics. And I'll just begin by stating that when I say marginalized communities, I say I'm referring to communities of people of African descent um, globally in the Americas, on the African continent, in the Caribbean. We who oftentimes, are struggling to gain economic, global, and political power. We have this relationship with politics where we come out usually for presidency when we're voting for the president. We usually don't come out for local elections. And oftentimes we don't know when local elections are held. We oftentimes don't really know the intricacies and complexities that are involved with our government. And this is an issue because if you don't know how politics works, then you can't make an informed decision that is best for yourself, for your families, and for the future, for your communities, for the schools in your communities, for the facilities, hospitals, agencies, and so forth. So it's really important that marginalized communities handle politics like they would. An example would be your husband or your wife. You have to know what it entails. So my name is Erica Verdes. I'm a Dominican Republic GPAN representative, but I am located in the United States. So in the United States, there's three branches of government. There's the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. Presently, everyone is speaking about the presidential elections, and everyone is, discussing who they should vote for. And we have different political officials that represent what we look like, right? What people of African descent look like. It might be a person that is of color running for president, like Kamala Harris, um, against Trump, right? Or Biden, and so forth, right? You have different people in the elections, and a lot of times in our communities, go for we always try to vote for a person that is reflective of us, right? Because in politics, usually they'll put political officials in office or in the running that will attract a people. So if they want, to get your vote, then obviously they're going to have someone that looks like us in the role, and they're going to you know push forward whatever agenda they want to push forward. But it'll be a person that looks just like a person from our community, right? And if we don't understand politics, then we you know can quickly decide, okay, well, I'm gonna vote for this person. This is a black woman, this is a black man, right? This is an African man, right? And then you quickly vote for the person, because you think this person is one of us, and this person has our best interests at heart, right? They understand our struggle, they understand that we're struggling for global economic power and all of that, and you go ahead and you put in your vote. And historically, you quickly realize that the outcome of that is actually that nothing changes for our communities, nothing changes for our people, right? So why is it important for marginalized communities? You call her Stephanie, I call her Huffany. Oh, somebody is. Um, that is why in our marginalized communities, you want to make sure that you understand, for example, if you're located in the US, that you have to vote for your congressman. Your congressmen are the ones that make decisions in regards to the policies that impact your life. right? Congress involves senators and congressmen. If you are not involved in your local officials, in your with your local politicians in your communities, it doesn't matter who you're voting for as a president, because the president is sitting at a round table with your congressmen and senators, and Congress decides if a bill passes or a policy passes, right? The president is a face. They can make an executive order, but most policies and most bills cannot be passed without Congress. So a lot of times our people come out too late. We come out when it's time to vote for a president, and we look for a person that can connect with our community, that looks like our community, right? That looks like our um African brothers and sisters, Hispanics, people of African descent, right? We always vote for that person without doing our research and understanding, you know, who they are, what has been their political agenda, right? So, how should marginalized communities handle politics? They should know who they are endorsing. You should know what candidates to stand for. Who is this candidate? What are they going to do for you? And you should know why voting is different for this year for you. What's going to make this candidate the best candidate this year? And what's going to make them different than all the other candidates that came beforehand? Right? So, a lot of times when we come out and we discuss, you have to also remember that the media plays a major role, right? So when politics are happening, the media is utilized as a way to push forward the agenda of the candidate that has the most monies, right? So if a lot of our people, we watch the news, we're reading newspapers, and we're just reading what they're reporting to us, right? But you have to remember the systems that these politicians are working under, right? So an example would be what good is it to have a African president if the African president is working with a Congress full of Europeans, right? Don't that may not have our best interests at heart, right? So it's just voting for a face, because when they go back to the decision making table, when they sit around the decision making table, it's going to be the European agenda. So this applies, even though elections are going on here in the US, this applies globally to marginalized communities. We don't have the kind of relationship with politics that we should have. The kind of relationship with politics that we should have is that we should do our research. We should know who and what we're voting for. We should have our politicians working for us. They should be proving to us what it is that they're going to do to help our communities. And not just with words. You have to look at their record, their political record. You have to look at what sort of policies did they vote for when they were in Congress. Most of our presidential candidates were already involved in the government system. So you can see what sort of policies they were voting for, where their mind state was before they decided to vote for presidency. So we have to be very careful to, during elections, to just quickly be trustworthy of someone that looks just like us in the elections. Not to say you should always vote for your people. You should always support your own people, so long as it's a person who is has your best interest moving forward, the best interests of your children, your families, your communities, your economical status, right? So, for example, in the US, no matter what president wins, right? Um, we didn't really have a presence in voting for our congressmen or the judges that decide who gets sentenced for what. Um, we don't really get involved at that level, and that's the local level, and actually that's the most powerful level. So then we become surprised when we have issues such as mass incarceration or we become surprised when we say, well, I voted for the first African president. I voted for the first Hispanic woman president. I voted for the first black woman president. And then when they're in presidency, they don't fulfill all of their promises. It's because they're still operating under a system of white supremacy. So how do we combat that? How do we work together to make informed decisions within politics? The way you combat that is by helping to create your own political parties, by funding your own political parties, by coming together and having those individuals on a local level who are in your community, who are involved with politics. Put your monies together and support that person and endorse that person. You don't have to just subject yourself to vote for the candidates that are presented to you by a system that is run by white supremacy. So, it's really important that when it comes to politics that we don't just vote based on what's on the news or what's in the newspaper or what you heard someone else say. You have to read, you have to do the research. A lot of times in our communities, we have those candidates who come in and say, I promise not to cut off this social service, which helps the Black or Latino community, or I promise to stop immigration laws that will not allow you to come to, for example, the US, and we'll vote for that candidate. But we didn't actually go and read the bill to see if it was in writing that this is actually what's going to happen. We just heard the speech, we heard what they said, we voted for them, and then once they're in office, that's it. We got to deal with them for the next 4 years if it's the presidency, 6 years if it's a congressperson. So these are things that are very important because they really inform the the way our lives are impacted on a daily basis. How much funding does your school get from your government? How much funding does your school get for, how many hospitals, how much medical care you have available to you? So you can't come in at the end of the race and then say, I'm going to vote for this president and think that a drastic change is going to happen. So when it comes to how marginalized communities should handle politics, they should handle it like a significant other. They should know it inside out. They should know it on a local level, and they should know who their politicians are in their communities first. They should they should have those politicians in their communities first prove to them why they should be their politicians. You should protest when you have a politician that is not meeting the needs of your community, because your dollars, your monies is what endorses them, is what funds their position. And a lot of times we may not know that, right? We may not know that because in our educational systems, they don't really educate us on how politics work, right? I, as a person of African descent, going to who went to public school, I don't recall that they ever discuss how the government works. They tell you briefly on the surface level, but they never discuss local elections. We always hear about the presidential elections, but there's this whole team behind the president that really has the power and controls the decisions. So we skip that step and we come in too late. And we end up every 4 years in the US, we end up wondering why these politicians are in office and no changes are happening in our community. You have to look at Congress. You have to look at the judicial branch, the judges who incarcerate our men, our women, who break up our families, right? Who we have to look at the economical state in our communities. That is impacted by the political official in that community. Who is your political representative? You have to know that. You have to know who is your political representative, who is the person that specifically represents your district, right? If you don't know that, then how can you vote for the president? You don't even know who represents you on the most local level. So, I just want to encourage our people to be informed. If you don't know, then read or ask some questions, but don't think your vote is not powerful or it doesn't matter. It's only not powerful when you're just voting for someone just because someone else said to vote for them, but you're not making an informed decision. But if you're informed and you know why you're making this decision, and you have seen that this person has a record of helping your community, then you should go ahead and place your vote, and your vote is powerful. And your vote is powerful. So I'm just going to take some questions because I'd rather have a dialogue with you all. Some of you are making some comments in the section in the comment section. Um, Somebody said go Trump. Okay, hello. You call her Stephanie, I call her Heffany. I mean, this is a serious topic. I see some comments in the comment sections that are not serious. And I think that that's part of the problem. As a community, we don't take politics seriously, and politics control our world and the conditions of how we live. So I'm very saddened to see these comments here because it shows that our people are in a place where they don't take certain things seriously that affect our lives, that affect our children's lives. So the first thing I would like to say is sometimes when you don't understand something, you try to deflect from it and you try to talk about other things. And this is an example of that. When if you don't understand politics, then you should start learning about politics because politics inform your world. They control your world. The school system you go to, you know, if you need if you want to apply for aid to go to school, we are still are not in the position to own our own schools, our own educational systems, our own facilities, our own institutions. That's what we really should strive for. Then we wouldn't have to worry about these things in terms of who to elect and so forth. And I am hopeful that we will get there, but we're not there right now. So since we're not there right now, then we should really be focused on learning who is involved in controlling the decisions that impact our communities when we go to school every day, when we go to work every day, when we apply for a job. What's the unemployment rate? You know, where's this funding coming from? And the people funding the communities that we live in, are these people reflective of who we are? Are these people representing our agendas? Are we coming up with agendas and showing up to local community meetings with our local representatives? Are we bringing up the issues that we are experiencing? Racism, right? Um, Mass incarceration, right? Uh, Killings at a massive rate, right? Are these things that we're bringing to the table with a plan and an agenda of how to move forward? Or are we just protesting and then showing up for an election without having without making an informed decision, without knowing why we're voting for this person? You know, what has this person done for our community? Is this person likely to follow through with our agenda? So for now, I am, if anybody has questions, feel free to ask. But for now, I just really want to encourage you all. You know, Historically, it's been our own people that have been working within systems of white supremacy. Even if they're in leadership positions, they really don't have the control. So we have to remember How do we give our leaders, our true political leaders, control? The way you give our true leaders control is by funding them, endorsing them. They can't move forward without the economic power. So even though globally we're in an economic state where we're struggling, if each and every one of us came together and decided on one candidate in one geographical location and we put our monies together and endorse that candidate, then we would have a better chance of having a candidate in office that will really address our needs and the needs of our community and will really be beneficial to our children who are going to be the future leaders, right? Because we have to think about that. What is our world going to look like when our children are adults, you know? So the way we do that is by providing economic support to our political leaders that we know, right? It could be that neighbor that is into politics, that you know is involved in the community every day. Encourage them to vote, encourage them to run for office, encourage them to take on a leadership position and come together as a community, put your dollars together and endorse that person. Because in the white supremacy system, the way it's powerful is because they have the economics. So if we don't have the economics to endorse the political leaders that truly have our best interests, then we're really voting for political leaders that are working within their system of white supremacy. Even if they look like us, they may be able to do some things, but they're still controlled by the system that they work in. So we have to take notice of that. We have to have understanding about that. So I just want to encourage you all, especially in the US, we're in the middle of elections, and vote for the candidate that you have seen historically has passed policies and bills that help our marginalized communities, right? That's who you should vote for. In Ghana, when you're having your elections and so forth, a lot of time there've been many leaders who have basically lied to the people, right? So what do? You have to create your own political party. How do you create your own political party? By uniting together, creating an economic budget for the party, coming up with an agenda of what you're demanding from your political officials. Political officials are supposed to serve the people. If it's not a dictatorship, you understand? If it's not a dictatorship, then your political officials are supposed to serve the people, right? That's how politics work. The people are supposed to have the power. So how can we as marginalized communities say we have the power where we don't come together to even discuss with one another who the best candidate is for us to vote for and why they're the best candidate and what are they going to do differently that's going to help our communities? That doesn't happen in our communities of color. That does not happen. What happens is we just watch the news, we read the newspaper, and we vote. And we continue this systematic cycle of voting for people who do not really represent us. It's more than just do they look like us? Do they care about us? Do they care about communities of color? Do they care about our economic status? Do they care about our oppression? Right? These are things that you have to pay attention to. So, again, my beautiful people, I encourage you all to get involved in the politics in your country, and do so starting first at the local level and come together as a people and make an informed decision and force your political officials to prove to you what they're going to do for you. Write up an agenda, present the agenda to your political officials. They're supposed to respond. They're supposed to let you know how they're going to respond to the needs of your community. We don't even ask them to respond. We don't even come with an agenda. We don't even tell them, this is what you need to do for us in order for us to vote for you. We don't even do that. We just come and we vote for somebody, but we don't make them work. And their job is to work for the people. Their job is to work for the people and fund the communities that they overpower, because the people really have the power. But if you don't know you don't have the power, if you don't know that you have the power, then they're making decisions for you. But when you know your rights, you know what, you know, the bills and policies state. I'll just use the US because I'm in the US. When you know what the Constitution states, you can say, we need you to amend this part of the Constitution. The Constitution still says that uh African American still says that blacks are half, one quarter of humans. It still says that. It hasn't been amended. So why are we voting for a president and we're not bringing forth this question? 3/5. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, 3/5 of a person. We're not even bringing up this. We're not even bringing up this requirement for our political officials to amend that in our constitution. We're not even doing that. We're just showing up for the elections and saying, okay, well, we're gonna vote for somebody today. Who are you voting for? You're voting for Trump? I'm voting for Biden. I don't like Trump. It doesn't matter. Or I don't like Biden. I'm voting for Trump. Why do we only have Trump and Biden as an option? I mean, where are our own political parties where we have another option that's best suited to us? The reason why we have Biden or Trump is because Biden's administration, Trump's administration had the economic backing to endorse them and to allow them to run. They had the information, they have a team of media supporters, they have individuals who are campaigning for them. Where are our people campaigning for our politicians and funding our own politicians and coming together to say, this is the candidate that's for us, we support him because he has done this, or her, they have done this and this for our community, we're funding them, we're campaigning for them, we're we're providing the publicity for them. We have to be self-sufficient in that manner. We can't ask someone to care for us. We have to start caring for ourselves and campaigning for ourselves. And if we have to come and put our money together and do it over a period of time so that we can create our own political parties and systems, then we need to do that. We need to do that. We need to have our own political agendas. We can't just say we're voting for somebody who has their own agenda. It doesn't matter if there's one thing in their agenda that seems beneficial to us. What about the other 30 things that are continue to help us be oppressed? That continues to help us, not have any economic power, right? Everything begins with economic power, period. You can't begin to tell someone to respect you if we don't have economic power, right? We can say, oh, we should have more representatives that look like us. We can say, we need to have more individuals who care about our communities. But if we ourselves don't have anyone in our community who is running for office, who we are endorsing, who we're putting our own funds for together, who we are campaigning for, then it doesn't matter. You can't ask the white man to care about your issues. You can't ask a white supremacy system to care about your issues. You need to care about your issues. You need to care about your communities. You need to come together. And I'm not saying that we don't. I think we do care about our communities, but we don't have enough information about how politics work for us to utilize those resources, political resources in our favor, right? We don't know who to vote for, why we should vote for them. We don't even know our local politicians. In the US, if you ask anyone in the US who's their local political representative, most people don't know. Most people don't know. But if you ask them who they're voting for president, they're going to tell you somebody. They're going to say, I'm going to vote for this president or this president. Meanwhile, they don't even know who their local political official is. They don't even know who that person is. So, how can we say, you know, that let's vote for the next black president, the next black woman, the next Hispanic woman, whatever it is? How can we say that? What does that even mean when we don't even know who our local political official is? If our local political official is not a black woman or a black man who has our best interests at heart, if our congressmen are not black women and black men who have our best interests at heart, it doesn't matter if you vote for a black woman or a black president, because they're sitting at the round table with people who are pushing forward the agenda of white supremacy and the oppression of our marginalized communities. And we're going to continue year after year asking them to take our rights into consideration, to care about our communities, to fund our communities, to give us reparations. And at some point, we have to sit back and say, we've been asking for this for years and it hasn't happened. So we have to do it for ourselves. We need to fund our own political parties. We need to fund our own leaders on a local level and push them forward to then, yes, vote for president, but push forward for your local leaders, for your congressmen, for the people that make decisions, for your judges to look like you, to come from your communities, and help get them the financial backing. All black businesses should come together to endorse politicians that come from black communities. That's what our white candidates do. They team up with companies, advertisements. You see them all over the media. We should be doing the same thing. We should be doing the same thing. We should have our own endorsements. We should have our businesses coming together and endorsing a candidate. We need to have our own media outlets, right? And we all know this. We all know we need to have our own media outlets. We all know that we need the economic power. And it seems a little bit like repetitive, right? Because we know the economic state that we're in. But we can't stop talking about it because it's the root of the problem. We can't ignore it because it's the root of the problem. We can't just keep saying we're voting for the next president, we're voting for the next president, and we're not funding our own politicians and our own political parties, because we're going to end up in the same wheel of being in a system of white supremacy. Yeah, you might have one, two, or three black and Hispanic political officials, but who's controlling overall the final decisions? Who are the majority of public officials in your government, wherever you are, whether you're in the Caribbean, whether you're in Africa, in one of the 56, 54 countries? Who's your political official? There's the president, but who is the president sitting at the round table with? And do you have any involvement with those individuals? Are you providing them with your agenda? Have they proven themselves to you? Right? If year after year a government sees, you know, if year after year a government sees that they don't need to worry whether we vote or not, because they're still going to do whatever they want to do regardless, because they have the financial backing and support, that's a problem. That's a problem, because that technically means that We're okay with being powerless. Year after year, we're allowing political officials to work within a white supremacy system and not prove to us what they are going to do for our communities. And we just keep voting and voting and voting, and there's been no change. There's been no change. It doesn't matter if you present to me a black president, a black female or male president. It matters to me that that black or female president cares about their community and hasn't sold out. That's what matters to me. Yes, I want a black um female president or a black male president, but only if their best interest is in our community. If it's not, then I don't. I need to see a person who cares about our community in a way that it shows that it's proven in their political history, in the bills that they vote for, in the policies that they pass, right? Now we're going through a COVID pandemic, for example. How the pandemic is handled, and you know, people have lost their jobs, unemployment rates have risen, um, children are doing school remotely. How that's handled is controlled by those senators and congressmen that sat across the table with the president. It's not just the president. Okay? So if we didn't vote for the people that will represent us over the course of these years on a local level, then when a whole pandemic hits, there's nobody representing us. So this high unemployment rate is mostly affecting who? Our people. This lack of economical support, all of that is affecting our people because we don't have any real political officials that are representing us, that are not working under the white supremacy agenda. So we need to create our own parties, our own political parties. We need to provide our own funding. We need to come together and ask questions. I rarely hear our people asking our political officials questions. Have you? When you see the news, I don't see us demanding for anything. I don't even see our written agendas. And we don't fully read the bills. There's a reason why the bill, if you open up a bill, it's usually very long and extensive. Why do you think that is? It's so that it's not easy for you to pick up and read and understand. So that means that we have to do the work and read that long bill that affects our lives and say, you know what? This candidate voted for this bill, and this bill is the reason why the schools don't get the funding that they're supposed to get in my community. I'm not voting for that person. That's how you make an informed decision. You don't make an informed decision by seeing the news and, for example, Biden or Trump comes on there and says, I promise to not cut Medicaid. And now you're a person that receives Medicaid and you say, you know what, I'm voting for him because he said he promises not to vote. He promises he's not going to cut Medicaid. No, you need to see and read that bill that they're promising to pass, that they're so-called saying that they will pass. You need to see how many people in Congress are likely to support a bill that is not going to cut Medicaid in that administration. You have to do the research. And a lot of times when you don't understand something, it can be intimidating, and so you just you just don't even deal with it, right? And I think that's part of what happens in our communities. Because we don't really understand our own politics, we stray away from it and we don't try to learn more about it. But that's exactly what they want us to do. Because if we're blind, if we're easily convinced, then that's of benefit to them. I'm about to invite a guest. Let me see. Okay, so I think we might somebody wants to come on and join. Um, if you guys want to come on, feel free to come on and let's have the conversation. So, I really think that it's important for you all not to feel powerless, because when you feel powerless, it's what helps our political officials who don't have your best interests at heart. It helps them maintain their power, right? When you feel like, I don't know anything about politics, that, I don't know anything about that, I'm not getting myself involved in that. That matters because there's power in numbers and there's power in economic funding. So one less person is one less person that's our person, a person that has our best interests, right? So show up to those political campaigns. Don't hesitate to ask a question. It doesn't matter if you feel it's not going to come out the right way. Ask the question. You have the right to speak, to ask of these political officials, why should I vote for you? Why should I vote for you? You notice that political officials have become so confident that they're going to have votes that they don't even ask the people too much what they want from them. They just tell them, we're going to do this. I'm going to do this for you. We need to show up, and you know, we need to make sure that we're represented, that we know what we're talking about, that we know who the candidates are, that we understand why it's important to vote on a local level. So it looks like we have a guest. Welcome. If you can come on camera.
Hi,
Hi.
how are
How you
you?
doing? How you doing, sister? Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, I my camera seems to be having some trouble, so I think I'm just gonna have to do the mic if that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Welcome. So
Thank
I'm
you.
glad that you joined us. So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts in how our communities make decisions in regards to politics?
So before I answer that question, how far along are you guys in terms of the communication so I can be on board with what you guys have been discussing so far?
So we're just discussing how marginalized communities should handle politics, and we're just discussing that it's very important that our people understand that local political officials um, really control the policies and the decision making when it comes to, I was using the United States as an example. Congressmen and senators and local representatives, they really come together and make decisions on what policies and bills are passed. And oftentimes our people don't show up until it's time to vote for a president. but there's three legislative branches, and we should know how our government works, and we should know who our local political officials are even before we decide this is a president we're going to vote for. We should be voting for our senators, for our congressmen, for our local political officials to ensure that our agendas are pushed forward. And I'm sorry, I would like you to introduce yourself because we didn't even, if you could just tell us your name and where you're from.
Yeah. So my name is Louisette Saint Fort, and I'm calling from Toronto. Um, I actually got this information from Daniel.
Wonderful.
Yeah, you know Daniel. I'm assuming.
Yes, of
Okay,
course.
okay,
Yes.
because I do see a symbol. Um, well, in regards to your statement, like as I just said, I'm out in Toronto. And I even myself I'm guilty. I don't know all of the branches in Canadian government nor in American government. I mean, we're all America at the end of the day, Canada and the States.
Yes.
um the thing is, right now I'm actually back in school for psychology and public policy with the intent of getting into politics, because I think one of the biggest things is that I know it's ironic, right? I don't know all the branches of government, but that's something that I want to be a part of. The thing is, one thing with our people that I've observed is, number one, I think people like you, people like us, um, I think what we have to start doing, number one, is create books, small pamphlets, information, right? With what these parties do, their definition, their purpose, right? And
Right.
have little groups, like little groups, call on our family or friends. Have little discussion groups on probably like a monthly basis to educate them, because it's the education. If they don't understand the levels, the different levels of government and what they do, then they won't be able to participate in some of the movements and the different policies that are arising. So I think a lot of it has to do with education. That's the first thing. um, the second thing is, because of the fact that we, as you melaninated people, we've only seen white faces as positions of leadership. I think at this point of time, I think a lot of us are very tired of seeing the same repetitive faces most of the time. Even here in Canada, you look in Europe, it's the same thing. In Africa, yes, there are Black leaders. In the Caribbean, there are Black leaders. But again, they're being controlled by the same colonial forces in the background. So I think what's happening is that we need more faces like us on the front end of education, of educating what these parties are. And also, we need to motivate each other into getting into these positions as well, because yes, in the States there are a lot more Black faces in term of in government that are like mayors and so forth, compared to Canada. But I think what's happening is we have to also connect our people to those parties as well. You see what I'm saying? Because some of us don't know who these people are. So it's really, I think it's a level of education and information and outformation to let our people know what is and who is. You see what I'm saying? Because once
Yes,
they understand that
absolutely.
level, that first intro 101 to these parties and what they do, then we might be drawing in more of our people into wanting to do more, because a lot of times government and politics sometimes seem very complicated and convoluted, but when you sit down and break it all it is just the understanding of people, what people
Yes,
do and why people make choices. And now that I'm back in school for public policy, I see it on a with a better scope. And I think if we could bring that same knowledge to our people, it won't intimidate them so much. You see what I'm saying?
absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think, and it's no judgment because I really think that there's a reason why our people don't really have the knowledge. And I think that's on purpose. I think that, you know, our in our marginalized communities, our children are going to public schools. and the information that they're receiving are in this on is in these public schools, and they're not talking about, in depth, at least they're not talking about all the branches of government and how do you vote and who do you vote for. So these are dialogues that we need to start creating, like you mentioned, amongst ourselves, within our homes, having meetings, educating one another, because we don't know on a global scale, we don't know how politics works. And it wasn't until I got a degree in public policy and administration that I did start learning about politics. Beforehand, I had no idea. And I think that that shows and that sends a message. That means that, most of us probably just don't know. And it's not our fault. I think it just is purposely planned that way. Because once you know knowledge is power, once you know, then we can come together and we can start creating our own political parties and funding our own politicians. We don't have our own political parties, you know. I'm of a lighter hue and so forth, but I'm of African descent. I'm Dominican and Senegalese, and I don't see not one party that is representative of people of African descent. I usually in the US they speak about Democrats, they speak about Republicans, but the independent parties, we're not funding our own party. So, I like I said, I would love to see a person of African descent in office, but we have to be informed enough to know that this person is not just a face, right? Because a lot of times the best way to sway people is and gain their trust to be able to impose policies that could be detrimental to them is by using someone that looks just like them.
Right.
So what I'm saying is we should vote for people that look just like us, but we should vote for those people that we're funding, that we're campaigning for, that we've built our own political party and we truly know who they are, right? Because we're working within a system that is a white supremacy system. And a lot of our people who we voted for in there, right? Those few faces in there that look like us, um, they're working right alongside the white supremacy agendas, right? And maybe not necessarily because they want to, but because they went into politics, they thought they could make a difference. But once they're in there, the pressure is on, and the system is run by mostly white supremacists, by people who don't have our agenda at hand. So now it's either you decide to leave politics altogether, or you work within the system that you are now employed by and a part of, right? The only way to combat that dilemma for our leaders, our political leaders that look like us, is by creating our own political parties, our own agendas, funding them, endorsing them. And I don't think we should have shame in not knowing, because I think that in the dispersion of people of African descent globally, we're speaking different languages, we had different colonizers. It is not a surprise that we don't know our politics. It just goes right along with the whole system of colonization and oppression. It's a way to control us, for us to not know. So we have to go out of our way. And yes, we have to work twice as hard to understand a system that we didn't create, that we don't agree with, and try to reform it, or in a manner that is beneficial to us. And some may argue that we should create our own system, but I think that takes, and I'm not against that totally, but that takes even more economic power that we need to gain, and we're not there yet. So I think we should start at a local level where we know you should know who your local representative is. You should
Right.
know who that person is, you know?
Everything that you just said, it was very, very true, especially speaking of like representatives that are already in the government that get forced into um doing things that is against their moral conduct, right? But another thing that I think we have to also speak on when it comes to politics is also the shadow government and different sororities and fraternities. I'm not knocking anybody who are a part of fraternities and sororities, because not all sororities and fraternities um, are based on insidious things, right? Negative things.
Right.
But
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to politics, as you keep going up this quote unquote ladder, um, you start to get into rooms with politicians that are groomed for a very long time to naturally cater to um, a wider demographic of people, like you said, the supremacy, the white supremacy, quote unquote supremacy, right? um, and with these collective of people, they have the funding to control a lot of these fraternities and sororities to make sure that their agenda is met. So if you're part of these sororities and fraternities, you you will automatically feel the need to have to follow what's there. So a lot of times it's not necessarily the politics in itself. It has to do with the groups that you are a part of, the shoulders that you're rubbing. You see what I'm saying? The
Right.
people that
Yes.
you're quote unquote friends, because from university or college, you're in this sorority, you know these people know other people. So a lot of it is influenced by that predominantly. And again, I'm not knocking
Right.
anyone for fraternities and sororities. These are things that, um, if people also understood that these things do exist, because you have these rumors of, oh, Illuminati and the secret society and all these kinds of things. These are brotherhoods and sisterhoods that started in Africa. These are things that our ancestors started, but it got perverted by colonizers. So once we start to understand that information as well, we'll be able to also add that to the element as to why, when we get into politics, why our people tend to convert and switch their narrative so quickly, is because a lot of times their sororities, their fraternities, their black fraternities and sororities were funded by white supremacists for fraternities and sororities as well. So they feel they cannot go against the groups that they joined with, that they banded with from university, college, and so forth, right? So there's a lot of
Yes.
different levels as well when it comes to why our people tend to switch. And exactly what you said, it is important for us to fund our to fund representatives of our own. And again, I think with starting that, it has to be connecting, finding that representative within your circle or your community or whosoever, and having them band with some sort of educational outlet that is really um, psychologically friendly. And what I mean by psychologically friendly is making it, again, that people are not confused about what is politics. Politics is boring, politics is this. Because if you notice, with black people, the system made sure to sell us only entertainment. Like, I'm a musician, I'm an artist, I literally grew up in performing arts, right? But
Yeah.
also with that, I had to recognize that I'm not just an artist, I'm also a mathematician, I'm also this, I'm also that. But with our programming as black people, they literally only promote wealthy black people as entertainers, right? And
Yes.
very
Mm-hmm.
few as politicians, as scientists, as mathematicians, as inventors, which we are. We came from that.
Yes.
So they don't really
Yes.
promote that enough, right? They don't promote
No,
that.
they don't.
Right. So we also have to remember that when we're going to package things to our people, we have to package it in a way that they see, hey, this is actually just as important to you as basketball, as football, as singing, as dancing, as the party. We have to package it in that way, not to say dumb it down, but we have to show them just how important this is to them, to learn that foundation of what politics is. Because a lot of our people have been psychologically programmed from such a young age that we don't know how to come out of that mind control, that MK Ultra, that Monarch program that they've tapped into our psyche.
Absolutely. I think you beautifully explained the complexities of our relationship with politics. I think that you mentioned it right on. You know, we there's just so many underlying factors, and when it comes to understanding politics, we have a lot of barriers, right? And a great way is definitely to make it easy for us to understand, make it engaging. I know right now Puff Daddy is actually working. I don't Most people know who Puff Daddy is, P Diddy. He's an entertainer. He's working on creating the first uh black political party. Now, I'm still doing my research on what the party actually stands for, and you know, it's still in development, but I agree with you. We need to have our entertainers, we need to have those celebrities we look up to, even though they're not politicians, they need to be involved in this whole movement of getting our people involved in politics, understanding politics, talking about politics, um, in order to make informed decisions. So I totally agree. And also, you're right. It's more than just funding, right? We have to fund our own political parties, but we can't just fund just because you're my friend. We have to fund a political party that represents us and our needs. And I think that's something that sometimes it's like it's a part of who we are. We're very friendly. We do want to support one another, but we have to think about the overall good of our people in a long-term scale, right? So I know, like, for example, Kamala Harris is running, and she is an AKA. She's part of the AKA sorority, so she has a lot of that support, right? But also, Kamala Harris has a history of incarcerating blacks. If you look back at her history, she has incarcerated blacks. Now, I'm not telling you that I to vote for her or not to vote for her. You know, that's a personal decision, and I'm not saying I'm not voting for her either. I am, right, but I'm not disclosing who I'm voting for. But what I am saying is that, you know, we have to fund the right candidate for us that looks like us. We can't just fund the candidate that looks like us just because we want to have somebody that looks like us in office, because we're tired of not seeing someone that looks like us in office, because then we'll be stuck for another 4 years, another 8 years or 10 years in a wheel of oppression. And so we have to think about that, because I think our people are multifaceted, right? We have entertainers, we have, like you mentioned, but not enough of our engineers or mathematicians or our educators or our politicians are involved with us, are communicating with us, are engaging with us, so we don't see it. And we need to see more of that. And I think we're desperate to see that. And it makes sense for us to be desperate to see our own people in leadership positions and representing us. But we can't allow our state, the state of oppression that's placed us in a state of desperation, to continue to choose candidates that will help continue to oppress us in a system of white supremacy, just so that we can say we have a black president. We have we need to have a black president. We need to have a black woman president. We need to have a many black presidents, many black women presidents, right? If we look at the history of presidency, it's ridiculous to say that we only have one black president, right? So I get that we need the face, but it still has to make sense for us on a long-term scale, because I feel like that's how they always get us. We always choose the candidate that looks like us, and then when it's time for them to put in the work, they're pushing forward this white supremacy agenda, you know? And unfortunately, it's true. Kamala Harris did incarcerate a lot of our people. She did. If you look back at the campaigns from the past, she was promoting the fact that she did promote a lot of our people. So maybe now she has had a change of heart, and maybe now she is trying to do the right thing by our people, right? I don't know, I'm not judging her. I don't know where her stance is, but I know she has a great support system in the AKA community, and they're part of the Divine Nine sororities. So like you mentioned, it's very intricate, it's very complex, and we do need to educate one another so that we just make informed decisions. I also think that I said I'm not disclosing who I'm voting for because I don't want it to stray from the message. You know, a lot of times people will say, "Oh, you're voting for her." Well, I don't agree. So and it strays away from the message. So that's why I'm not disclosing. But really, I think we should all be talking about who we're gonna vote for. And we should be doing it in a manner where we all know and we all come together and we all go vote for the candidate that truly is beneficial to us. But we should have good reasons. Like our dialogues should include, you know, does this candidate have a history of passing any bills or policies that have oppressed us? You know, or has this candidate helped pass any policies that uh, help our economic status, our social status? These are not like the sort of questions and conversations that we have when we talk about voting for a candidate. Are you still there with
I'm
us?
sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know if it's my phone that's cutting out or if it's your video that's cutting out. I'm not too sure. I don't know if anybody's having the same. I missed some of what you were saying just a second ago. I think it was
Oh, okay.
freezing.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I was just stating that, you know, a lot of times we like you mentioned, like I meant you mentioned the example of, you know, a lot of times people groups like sororities or fraternities do endorse and fund a candidate, right? But the thing is that in endorsing and funding a candidate, we still have to know, you know, why we're endorsing this candidate, and does this candidate have our best interests at heart? It has to go beyond, you know, yes, the person has to represent us and should look like us, but um, you know, but the candidate should definitely have a history of supporting our communities, right? Um, I use Kamala Harris as an example, right? She uh, has a history of incarcerating our black men, our black men and women, and she was boasting about it in the past. Now she's not boasting about it. She's stating that she's for our people, right? And I was saying that, you know, I'm not disclosing who I'm voting for right now because I don't want it to take away from the message. I was saying we really should be coming together and discussing who we're voting for, why we're voting for them, what have they done for our community, what sort of policies have they passed um, previously to them running for presidency, what sort of policies have they passed that have impacted our community in a good way or in a bad way, right? We need to have those sort of discussions. I think every time we talk about who to vote for, I always just hear very surface level reasons, right? Like, you know, in Kamala Harris's case, not to say that she's not a good candidate if you want to vote, if people want to vote for her, but I'm just saying these are the sort of dialogues we have. She has the support of AKA sorority, which is a Divine Nine sorority, is one of the first Black African American sororities, and she's an AKA, and they support her, right? And a lot of people are saying you should vote for Kamala Harris because she is one of us, right? But then there are other people who know a little bit more about politics that say, okay, well, she's an AKA, she is a black woman, but what policies was she a part of in making decisions that would impact our communities? And it was found that she helped incarcerate a massive amount of Black men. And so she supported mass incarceration. And during that time, she was proud of it. So if we don't talk about these things in our decision making, we have to talk about it. Maybe we don't have to talk about it to say we're not voting for her, but maybe we have to talk about it to ask her to explain herself. Why did you do that? What is your intention now? What are you going to do for us moving forward? Why should we trust that you won't do that again? And we're not having that sort of dialogue, and we should. We should.
I think there's certain parties that are having that dialogue amongst um, themselves. I do see things posted on social media that are, videos that discuss the amount of men that she did incarcerate. There is a lot of information that has been, posted up. I think what's happening is that we're still in that part of a paradigm where we as Black people, as melaninated people, a lot of times we want to see some of the light, but sometimes we're not ready to see all of the light. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes the truth makes us uncomfortable. Some of our people still get very uncomfortable. It's like, oh yeah, we like her because she's Black. We like her because of da 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 da. But as soon as the information comes up regarding what she did in the past, some people don't want to see it. It's like, no, 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 just that's in the past. You're trying to bring her down. You're trying to speak ill about her. There's so many different elements that people see on the surface, but they're not seeing the bottom level, the root, right? Because so half Jamaican, I think it is, and that also influences the Jamaican community too. So it's just her being in that position is influencing a lot of different communities that want to see a face that is reminiscent of themselves, but they're not looking at, just like what you said, they're not looking at her past. And is she coming with the same energy this time around? You know what I'm saying? Is she coming with 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 uh with some sort of policy that can put our people in a worse condition than they are now? And it's not like she's married to a man of color. Her husband is not Black, so it doesn't. So again, it's a question about influence. What's influencing her, who's influencing her. People can join a certain fraternity for the benefits, but it doesn't actually mean as well that they're working on behalf of the people of that colored or that Black fraternity as well. There's so many different elements. And I think if we're able to look at it just exactly what you said, if our people were able to sit down and look at the multifacetedness of these politicians, especially when they are quote unquote Black, it will help us to um, make a better decision. You know what I'm saying? Um, but at this point, it's really sad because I cannot recall any politician that has really done anything positive, a full 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10 for Black people. You know what I'm saying? I not even an 8 out of 10. I can't recall any on the top of my head. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So
Yeah,
this in
me
itself,
either.
yeah, and I think at this point is that I think a lot of our people are just so tired. A lot of them are just kind of fed up. They're just like, oh, whatever, politics is not for us. And again, I think it just goes back to, again, the education, that foundation of what is politics, who can be a politician, why do you think you can't be a politician? Like speaking to men in our community, young men in our community, young women in our community, do you think you could be in politics? Why don't you think you could be in politics? Oh, well, I only see old white men, or I only see certain people. You know what I'm saying? It's really changing the mindset and drilling it into them that anybody could be a politician, meaning anybody can find a group of individuals. If you're really, really serious and you really want to change things, even if you're not getting the amount of money that you want, your voice in itself and using the social media platforms that we have right now can really make a huge influence. Politics, we have to let people know politics is not just what we see as a Republican, as a Democrat, as a liberal, as a realist, as a conservative. There's so many elements to what is a politician. Just what you in yourself, Empress, you are a politician. You're taking the time to educate the people. You're taking that time out of your day to do something that few of us are doing. And with the few that are doing it, this is where we have to pull each other together and make it a bigger thing. And that in itself becomes a leviathan. That in itself becomes a government and a governing of the minds, right? That in
Yes.
itself becomes a microphone, and I think again it goes back to the education of what is politics, the intro, and define what Kamala Harris has done in the past, define what Obama has done in the past, define this, define that. And then you'll hear a lot of different stories like, oh, he didn't work on behalf of Black people, or he did work on behalf of Black people, and then sit down and break it down. Why did he go into this part of this country, and why did he do that, and what caused him to react this way, and was it him
Right.
or was it the people above him? So there's just so many different elements, and I think breaking it down to its most simplest parts will help our
Right.
people to understand.
Absolutely. Yes. I think Obama was definitely a great example. A lot of people question why did he go into the Middle East and um, you know, uh, start a war and so forth and kill, so-called terrorists who some people say were not terrorists and so forth. Um, I just think on a global level, and I agree with you 100%, 100%. I think that on a global level, we just need to definitely begin to have that dialogue, um, use our voices, know that our voices are powerful, not to think it far fetched for us to be able to talk about politics. We are our own politics because we represent our own people. And I just want to remind that a lot of times we get stuck on colorism, right? We know that there's an African diaspora and we come of many different hues. And I've seen politicians that are of a darker hue that have turned their back on us. But it's important to vote for politicians again based on what they do. um you know if they look exactly like our ancestors of the darkest hue, then that's beautiful. But it has to be someone that has our best interests at heart. It has to go beyond looks because this is how they always get us. They always get us just based on us voting. They always choose a person that looks like people in our communities to pass their agenda. That's how they always get us. So we need to have the conversation. We need to have the conversation. We need to do pros and cons, like you mentioned. How much of what this person that we voted into this position, this person of color that we voted into this position, what are the pros and cons? Yeah, maybe Obama went and um, you know did what he did in this case where he attacked a region of people that some people consider a people of color, right? But did he do other great things for the community? And does he have more pros than cons? I don't know, but that's the conversation that we need to have. We need to have that sort of conversation, pros and cons. We need to ask our celebrities, or encourage our celebrities to get involved in politics. I know like Kanye ran for office and people thought that that was just insane because Kanye has some mental health issues. But some of the things that Kanye was saying, I don't know if a lot of people know, but Kanye's father was a Black Panther. He was involved in revolutionary work. And even though Kanye does have mental health issues, he was coming from that place. But people, automatically shut it down. which I can understand. If a person is exhibiting mental health issues, how could you leave the country and so forth? But I don't think we did enough information either, you know. So you're right. I think this is has to be an ongoing thing, ongoing dialogue, an ongoing educational understanding that starts right at home with your family and your friends, and so forth. And the development of pamphlets is an amazing idea, because you can just go on your computer, for those in wherever you are who you're learning about politics, or you you can just print it up in your computer and print it out, make a few copies, and pass it around to people in your local community who you want to inform and educate, so that way we can have some sort of unified understanding and consensus about things. And you're right, they used to do that back then. They used to, during campaigning time, they used to pass out, like, flyers. I haven't seen much of it this time because they're using a lot of like virtually and electronic methods, but we need to use those same methods. We need to use those same methods to educate one another on a global scale. We also need to know politics on a global scale. We can't just know our politics in the US, because if you know your politics globally, then you understand why we're in the economic and social state that we are in the US. For example, if you know the politics in the African continent, you will more connect with your people, because you will see, wow, they're experiencing the same thing we're experiencing here, and you can create ties, and you can work together to sort of combat some of the political barriers that are in place to oppress our people on a global scale, right? Like, for example, still Africa doesn't have a seat in the United Nations. That's a problem, because every race has a nationality, right? For example, if someone heard someone from the US. There was a rapper, I forgot his name. I think it was ASAP Rocky. That he was incarcerated in London. I could be totally wrong. Trump was like, no, he's an American. He's ours. You can't incarcerate him. He has a nationality. When you have a nationality, your government steps in, and if another government does something to you, they come in and they pick you up and they bring you back to their country. They can't deal with you, right? Only your government can deal with you. So if, for example, Africa doesn't have a seat in the United Nations, and African Americans are considered technically American, they still have not given them an assigned nationality. I don't know if people don't realize that. If you check each African American celebrity, they're listed as American, because African Americans don't yet have a nationality. That is a big deal. That is a problem. How are
You're
we
very
voting for
correct. Yeah,
how are we
no, you're
voting
very
for our
correct.
president? How are we voting for our president, and we have not asked the question, how is it that we don't have a set nationality? Why are you calling us Americans? We're not American. We're African Americans.
Do you see, the thing is that everything you're saying is absolutely correct. And even with institutions like the United Nations, um, it's really crazy, because again, this is where we have to look back at a lot of these states in terms of African countries, America as a country, Canada as a country, these different countries, also known as states, that are recognized by each other as states. And the reason why they basically suppress intentionally the continent of Africa is intentional. It's not by accident. Is intentionally suppressed, and a
Yes.
lot of these quote unquote African leaders are getting paid. They are getting a big chunk
Yes.
of the pie to exploit their people and intentionally allow that suppression to occur, so that these Western, quote unquote, Western companies can still suck the blood out of that continent. It's by design. It's still this primitive accumulation type ideology that a lot of these quote unquote Black leaders still have, because they still have their arms wrapped in the arms of the colonizer. Like they cannot remove their mindset from being buddies with these colonizers that are killing their own people. You know what I mean? So when it
Yes.
comes to exactly what you're saying in terms of nations, what's our nationality? If we look back historically, prior to colonization, melaninated people were everywhere on the globe. Africa and America are literally brother and sister. If we just look at it geographically, America and Africa, all of the entire American continent is just across the way from Africa, just split by the Atlantic Ocean. That's all it is. And we had Africans traveling. They have anthropological evidence. They have evidence, archaeological evidence showing that Africans were traveling to America, and the Americans, quote unquote, Americans were traveling over to Africa. They have this evidence, but they choose not to share it. So if we were to sit here and just say that we are just American or we're just African, it would be a lie, because technically both of these continents were one. They were once together as one, and then over time they split. And there were people traveling back and forth prior to colonialism. You see what I'm saying? Even in Europe, you
Right.
find evidence, and you find evidence of African Moors in Europe. You see what I'm saying? With
Right.
their own
So
kingdoms.
right. So even when we look at the transatlantic slave trade, um, you'll find that from Africa, the first Africans were dropped off in the Caribbean, actually. And in the Caribbean, you'll find that this is why you see people of African descent of a different hue, because the colonizers in the Caribbean, um, they intermingled more with their slaves. But when they had those children were considered mulattoes and quadroons, and they still enslaved their own children because they had over 25% of African blood. So you'll find people of African descent in the Caribbean of different hues that are descendants from our African ancestors. And you'll find that on a global scale, that it's still the same social economic oppression going on globally. The Caribbean also doesn't have any seats in the United Nations. The only governments that have a seat in the United Nations are actually European governments and the US. And the US is the government in the United Nations where all other governments have to go to. They're part of the Security Council chair of the United Nations, where all governments have to go to discuss treaties, because the US oversees all the treaties that are imposed on a global scale. So if in Africa, for example, there are treaties preventing them from trading with one another, and there are treaties in the Caribbean preventing them from trading with one another, then the US is overseeing those treaties and approving those treaties. And the US is the highest funder to the United Nations. So when you look at that and you see that the Caribbean and the African continent are the only two continents that are not do not have a secure seat in the United Nations, then it helps you understand the level of oppression of people of
Yep.
color on a global scale.
Yep. 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 It's engineered. Exactly. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
sister, it's been a pleasure discussing with you. Hopefully, we can do this again. We have some comments here that I just want to share with you real quick. We have someone here that's just said, awesome speech. Thank you for educating us. And so forth. So, this is been, I think, a good discussion, and hopefully our people will be encouraged, and hopefully will propel a change forward somehow, even if it's one person, two people, three people, their voices matter. And like you said, we are politicians. And so I appreciate you. I appreciate your time and the information you shared with us.
Yes, in person, and your information was beautiful. You're just a walking book. You're a walking political book. You are a dream. I'm gonna take you. I'm gonna put you in my pocket.
Thank you so much. And
Yes, yes.
I just want to say bye to all of our brothers and sisters everywhere in Africa and the Caribbean and the US. And if you have any questions, you can always free to reach out. And just peace and love.
Peace and love, Empress, and thank you, Daniel, for the invitation. Okay, bye.
Bye.